my friend like messaged me, it's just like, good luck with this. And I was like, in France, you don't need luck, you need patience. So this is my second part of my series on essentially being a foreign student in Paris, Sorbonne. The first that I'll have in the link down below is more on how it is that I got in. So it's like dossier, a little bit of walkthrough, a little bit of the process. This video at the beginning is going to talk a lot more about how it is that you get through administration. But for the most part, this video is about what it's like being a foreign student and like, you know, I wouldn't say like existential questions, but just, you know, things about identity and how it is that you feel like you fit in. So I hope you find this helpful, and yeah, on to the video. So what was the very first administrative step after the acceptance? So applying for the visa and enrolling into the university. Once you get into France, you realize that just because administration exists doesn't mean that they reply to you all the time, and they are almost never timely. I miraculously found this person through this clown class that I did in the south of France, and she has a niece who was at the university at the time, who connected me with like a lot of different information that I'm super grateful for. And she's the one who told me that there are two types of inscriptions. One is the administration inscription. So this is where you pay for your fees. This is also where you submit this thing called attestation de responsabilité civile. So this is what you can get when you get l'assurance de l'habitation. So when you get an apartment or a place that you stay at, you need to have this thing that you pay every month so that you, if in any case that you need to be defended, you know, you have your rights covered. Here also you need the address and the phone number. How you get an address before you get anything, essentially it's a chicken and egg situation. I always talk to a lot of people to find out a lot of different types of options. If you want a way to find addresses, you can go to these two websites. One is PAP, pap.fr, and one is Le Bon Coin. PAP is more regulated. It's more specific to trying to get an apartment. Le Bon Coin is kind of like Craigslist, but you just have to be clear and smart about scams. Know that getting an apartment is really painful as a process. I made a video on that, but just know that it happens. I think like one of the advice that I would give is that be aware that French people would very much prefer to trust other French people, because in terms of jobs and in terms of like apartments, anything to do with signing contracts, it's kind of like this sense, in my opinion, that they're like, if anything bad happens, the world or their surroundings would just tell them like, who asked you to trust something that you didn't know? And I'm not saying that they're outright racist, because I feel a really strong sense of community, luckily, in my university, with a lot of my professors and a lot of my friends. But at the same time, you are a flight risk, just to be really honest, like in terms of the apartment and stuff, it just like makes sense. I explain a lot of this in that video. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that you know this so that you don't gaslight yourself into thinking that like, oh, why don't I have the same opportunities? One, it's also very difficult for French people in general to get an apartment in Paris. The other thing is that you just need to have this mindset that you don't limit yourself to whatever it is that you think that is necessary. There are all these like requirements, but just remember that you're dealing with a human being. And I think the reason why I believe that I got this apartment that I really like is because I, at one point, like just asked her, I'm just like, I understand that I'm a foreigner, and I understand that it's a bit more difficult to trust our dossier, like our file. But I wonder what it is that I can say or do to get this apartment. And when, you know, the mom or the person who gave me this apartment, she emailed me, she's like, your dossier is not the strongest, but my daughter liked you. So that's just my advice when you deal with, you know, trying to integrate in that way. The next thing is arriving in Paris. Once you arrived, what was the first thing you had to do to remain enrolled? So the main thing, I guess, was presence and not failing. If you do find yourself struggling and you fail, there's this thing called rattrapage, which is second chance. And then if you fail that as well, you have the option of taking the same class in the next year. So it's very, in a way, forgiving. It's annoying because once you see that, you're like, oh, that's my entire summer. But if the main point is that you don't want to fail so that you lose your visa, just know that at least at our university, there are chances for you to redeem yourself. At what point did money become an issue? I'm just gonna say to you, coming from LA, maybe I just have a different role in life now, but it is very, 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 very difficult to make money in Paris. Besides like how competitive it is for people to fight for spots of like every single level, how connected you have to be to even get into places, the limitations of a student visa, what kind of jobs you can have, the amount of rigor that is required for you for the first, your first like encounter in what school requires from you, especially when you're learning in a different language. Yeah, have a lot of savings because besides all of that, there's this thing called cotisation, which is 30% of your income. That is before the fees, and that is also before taxes. So it's not only difficult to earn a good rate, is that once you earn this rate, a giant portion of it does not belong to you. But this is why they have really good healthcare, but at the same time, it's gonna be spicy. So you just have to find a new way to like adapt in this new environment and position that you've chosen for yourself. The next question is, were there any fees or requirements you hadn't anticipated? I feel like in France, I have more issues with what to do with my time than with my money. So in America, I felt like if I wanted more access to things, I needed to have a lot of money to be able to, do anything, like join a class or, improve my skills in whichever way. Be a part of like different communities, be a part of different activities. Maybe it's also because I'm a student, but in France, I feel like my biggest issue is about me having to say no to things because I just do not have time. So there's a lot of like really exciting activities, a lot of cultural events that are for the most part either free or for a very affordable entry fee that I cannot go to because I just do not have time. Either because I choose to dedicate it to school, the videos that take time for me to make for YouTube. So in terms of fees or requirements, I think the higher earning power is matched with the higher cost of living, higher barrier of entry by money. Whereas in France, it's more of like your asset is your time. Waiting in line to like, deal with administration. But at the same time, going to the doctors is a lot easier in France than in America. The next question is, did you ever feel that your place was conditional or fragile? There have been like a lot of rules that make it a lot more difficult for foreign students to stay here, cost-wise, financially. How did that affect how you studied and planned your life? One, if you're French, you don't have to think about the visa situation. Other thing, if you're French, taxes, social security, carte vitale, healthcare, all of that is already like, you're already like rolling in part of the system. Your parents just apply for you. So if you're just like coming into this system, you have to apply for all of these things with absolutely practically no knowledge, where they reject you for no reason and they make you wait for like a year and a half. I'm just gonna say though, in a positive, empowering twist, that I choose to see it as a strength. And one of the recommendation letters that I got for, one of the processes that I had to go through here administratively, that everyone had to continue education, was that this person said that the way that I think and the way that I propose my arguments, because he was talking about my research project that I submitted, he said that this will not come from the classical philosophical formation. So essentially saying that a person from here would never think about the thing that I proposed. And it's both parts. I can't have all these difficulties without all these elements to offer. So yeah, I was just thinking of Hegel, but that would make this a really long video. This seems a bit downy, this video, but it's like serious, but like also I'm just talking to you, so there's no point like trying to make this like fluffy and happy. But regardless of all the struggles and the obstacles, it is literally the overcoming on all of this that would make me develop and transform as a person. And the most important thing is that you just remember why it is that you're doing what it is that you're doing. And the thing is that like, I never thought that I would be in this position of like being able to do this research that brings me so much joy and fulfillment with people that I genuinely feel extremely close with. Like there's this friend that I, made over the fact that like, she really liked my presentation on aesthetics. I really loved her presentation on aesthetics. And we didn't really talk, but like, over time, we started becoming really close. And like, she's one of those friendships that like we have dinner and after that we walk for a bit and you realize that like you've been talking for 5 hours until 12:30 in the morning. And I think like one of the most like enjoyable relationships that I have are the ones where it's like you just catch up with your friend about life and then you just like walk through Paris until like 11-12 a.m. in the morning, and then you go home and you're just like you didn't do anything so-called spectacular. You didn't jump out of a plane, you didn't do this like massive trip like flying somewhere, or you didn't have to buy something. You just found someone that you wanted to spend this much time with, that you felt so good with. I think one of the best gifts, besides like personal development from all these challenges that Paris has given me, it is the community and the type of people that I found here, because this is my 4th continent, my 4th country of residence, and I will say that I feel really good here. So closing questions, who do you think should apply to the Sorbonne as a foreign student? If you want, just try. Who am I to fucking decide for you? Like, whatever. Like, I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury. Just apply. Like, just do it. If you have the resources and it's a possibility for you and you have one life, just do it. There's this person who came up to me after my conference talk thing at the Zizak thing, and her goal is to get into Sorbonne for philosophy. And also like this video is actually motivated mainly because I spoke to her. I know a lot of people like message in the comments, and like a lot of people like write to me about like wanting this advice, but just meeting a person in real life and just like seeing how much it meant to her was something that like really moved me. There was this thing that doesn't really have to do exactly with Sorbonne, but kind of yes, because I think like one thing that Soraya said to me that I thought was extremely wise was to focus on the practice and the concrete. So not so much like try to achieve this ideal of like, I want personal self-transformation, but what ways of life can actually enable you to, practice in a way that helps you realize this ideal. Super Hegelian. But what I said to her was, I don't know if you're going to find what you're looking for, but I can tell you that you're looking in the right place. So was it worth it knowing what you know now? I would say yes. Would you choose the Sorbonne again under the same conditions? I wrote, my university education has never been the source of my suffering. It provided a medium for me to resolve a lot of my questions. So essentially what I meant by that is that, yes, studying for the exams and all that stuff is really difficult. Like for my research project, I've read almost literally 8 books cover to cover. And I still don't have my answers. I'm building it still, but, is it suffering? Like sometimes you're in the library on a Sunday and you're like, what am I doing with my life? But it's much more about, it gives me the capacity of like helping me to resolve this question, because I wouldn't be suffering if I didn't want to answer these questions. And I feel really grateful that I have a space and I have a director and I have this whole like institutional thing that enables me to actually resolve things that are worth suffering for. The next question is, what did staying cost you that no one mentions? The insurmountable dissonance between understanding of lived experiences. The amount of like French friends that I had that are really sweet, that just looks at me and goes like, I don't understand what you're going through because, I don't have to pay for rent. Like, I have my friends here. I grew up here. It's my language. And I also still find it very difficult in university. And I can't imagine what it would be like for you. I don't want to get too much into this, but you just have to accept that even if I really like listening to French, speaking in French, navigating life in French, and I love a lot of different languages because the poem that I'm going to read you is in Italian, the thing is that like sometimes the dissonance is both like painful but nice, because the dissonance means that I know that this person does not have my life experience, but I feel that they're trying to empathize and care for me. So that's what I want to say about that. The last thing that I wanted to share was this poem that I keep mentioning. And it is a poem that I was introduced in my Italian class. And I'm not romanticizing suffering, but I think this is why what really connects us is when we reach out to other people when we are vulnerable, and that they help us in return and we help others in return. Okay, so this one is called La Capra di Umberto SABA. So the goat of Umberto SABA, 1910. Ho parlato a una capra. Era sola sul prato, era legata. Sazia d'erba bagnata, alla pioggia belava. Quell'eguale bellato era fraterno al mio dolore, e li riposi prima per celia, poi perché il dolore è eterno. Ha una voce e non varia, questa voce sentiva gemere in una capra solitaria. In una capra dal viso samita, sentiva che relarsi ogni altro male, ogni altra vita. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.